Hey, it's Roy Newgate, and I wanted to take some time to discuss something that's been on my mind for a while now, and that's the potential of the rarest form of Haki, and that is, of course, Conqueror's Haki. I mentioned briefly in my previous video one of the potential uses of this Haki, but I thought I'd take some time to go further and explore why this ability is feared in the One Piece world. Before we dive into all of that though, if this is your first time here, or you just typically enjoy videos like this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for more content like this. And hit the like button too, because that helps a lot as well. Now, when it comes to Conqueror's Haki, or the color of the Supreme King as some like to call it, our first exposure to the ability was in the very first chapter of the series. And we got enough of it to where we knew that there was something very particular about this power, but we didn't know how it worked exactly. It wasn't until 433 chapters later that we saw more of it when Shanks arrived on Whitebeard's ship, and his presence caused those around him to become incapacitated. And Marco explained that those with a weak will wouldn't be able to withstand it, so it would be better for them to go inside. And eventually we saw what happens when two conquerors engage each other in a clash, as even the heavens themselves begin to open up, which is some pretty incredible imagery to sort of emphasize what it means to be a conqueror. And after that, throughout the series, mainly through observing Luffy, we saw more subtle hints and glimpses of this power as our understanding of it began to grow. Specifically that it can be used to subdue a large army of weak-willed individuals, or tame animals and other use cases. And honestly, for a very long time, on the surface it appeared like that was it. For over 1,000 chapters, it wasn't made explicitly clear that there was more to this Haki. But still, with some great subtlety, Oda was putting it out there that this was a power to be feared. We saw people overcome with shock whenever they saw the ability used, just like the Boa sisters in Amazon Lily. They are people who knew about the power and went from mocking Luffy and ridiculing him for being too weak to not taking him lightly and being cautious of what he might be able to do. But that still wasn't making things all that clear. But then when we get to Marineford, you see the admirals and other extremely powerful individuals that were present. They were stunned the moment that Luffy used his unknowingly. Then that's the point where you just know that there's something that Oda is hiding. Fast forward hundreds of chapters later, and we see that Kaido confirms for us that this ability can absolutely be used in one-on-one combat, that there was more to it. It wasn't just a mark for those who had the qualities of a king. Conquerors, as we now know, can be infused with attacks to make them stronger. Luffy, with as much training as he did to learn advanced armament, still did not have what he needed to be able to effectively fight Kaido. It wasn't until this Conqueror's Haki awakening of sorts that his attacks had the power behind them that he needed. The thing that stands out the most about this is that Kaido claims that only a handful of the strongest can manage this, so it does seem like even among conquerors there's a select number of them that stand out and are even greater and have a higher potential. Now, Conqueror's Haki is very rare. 1 in a million is very rare. Whether it's to be taken literally or not, that's still a very low number of people. But I think people often overestimate how rare it is. Like, for example, if there were a billion people in the One Piece world, taking things literally, that would mean there's 1,000 conquerors. And Chinjao sort of reiterates this idea as well when he tells Luffy in A Seas Ahead that there are countless Supreme Kings. And this is just pretty much making it clear that Luffy has way more competition than he realizes and has to work harder to be the king of the Supreme Kings. And I feel like some people probably have the idea that there's only like maybe 20 or 30 total conquerors in the story or something like that, but that doesn't seem likely. My main point though is that with how many Supreme Kings there likely are and how so few of them have the ability to infuse their attacks with conquerors, it just speaks volume on how exceptional you have to be part of this upper echelon of Conqueror's Haki users. And it speaks even more volume that Luffy was able to manage this at this stage. I think learning the flow of Haki through Ryu training was vital as well. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been as easy for him to understand. Now, there were hints throughout the story, mainly through the anime, that Zoro was capable of using Conqueror's Haki through his attacks as well. For example, we have Great Dragon Shock that we've seen in the manga when Zoro used it against Monet. And the nature of it seemed strange to Tashigi, as she was wondering if Zoro even used Haki given how she was overwhelmed and having a hard time reforming herself. And when we see Great Dragon Shock again in Wano, Zoro uses it in the gambling hall to incapacitate his opponents without even leaving a single cut. They pass out as if Conqueror's Haki had been used on them, as their eyes go white. And at the time while watching this, it was sort of hard to digest because this felt like it had to be conquerors, but we had never seen it used this way. So how could it possibly be the case? Especially in this scenario where it wasn't a big stage or some sort of huge reveal. So it felt like Toei was just sort of freestyling and taking liberties that may have not been allotted to them. But at this point, it's easier to see that this was sort of a foreshadowing, not just for what Conqueror's Haki can do, but for what Zoro was capable of. Because on an even grander scale, we find out that his Ashura technique may perhaps be a form or application of Conqueror's Haki. Now, it's still not clear whether that's always been the case or if he awakened it in the moment on the roof, but when you go back to Rayleigh's description of what Conqueror's Haki is and how Kaku described Ashura, then the possibility opens up that Ashura is pure Conqueror's Haki. And so the ultimate focus of this video is the fact that there may be several ways to weaponize Conqueror's Haki. To put things into perspective, for a while it was thought that Kaido and Big Mom were these monsters carried by physical strength, and for someone like Shanks to keep up with them, he would need to even the playing field with an advanced form of Conqueror's Haki. But now we see that Kaido and Big Mom are able to weaponize Conqueror's Haki themselves. So even with this, I don't think we've seen the limits of this ability. Or rather, a better way to put it, I don't think we've seen all the possible applications of Conqueror's Haki coding. So Shanks is very likely capable of more with his usage of the ability. And let's take Mihawk for example. Though not confirmed, I think most of us can agree he is very likely a Supreme King. A way to look at it for him is that he is the king of swordsmen. So assuming he is a user, I think we've had very subtle hints through him on what else a top tier Conqueror's Haki user may be capable of. In Marineford, it looked like he asserted his will onto Luffy in the moment that he reached in to attack. Luffy saw something unusual that there really wasn't much of an explanation for. So then you begin to wonder, is it possible that Mihawk infused his Conqueror's Haki with Observation Haki and visually imposed his will on Luffy? Who's to say for sure, but it's definitely something to consider with how mysterious this encounter is and what we now know. Another panel pertaining to Mihawk that has me wondering is when Zoro says his glare is sharp enough to kill a man. And this may be an exaggeration of sorts, but it makes me wonder a little as well. Can you kill an individual with nothing but the basic use of Conqueror's Haki? When you think about it from a practical standpoint, if you can impose your will on something like 50,000 fishermen all at once, why can't you do the same to one particular weak-willed individual to the point where they just die? Because we know you can control how much Conqueror's Haki you use, from simple taming to knocking someone out, and perhaps to straight up killing them. Of course, this all depends on the gap between the person using it and the one whose will is being overwhelmed. Either way, I definitely think that this has a very strong possibility. Something I really want to touch on is how Conqueror's Haki may be applied to devil fruits. We know that Armament Haki can be used in conjunction with the person's devil fruit ability for them to reach a new peak in their power, just like with how Luffy uses Gear 4th. He combines his Armament Haki with his rubber to create a completely new form in which his body is made up of rubberized Armament Haki, and this in turn gives him greater speed and physical punching power. And there's Katakuri, who uses his Observation Haki in tandem with his Mochi ability to mimic the properties of a Logia. For Conqueror's Haki, we have one particular example of what might be possible for a Devil Fruit user who possesses this ability. In the Ace novel, Ace's Haki was described by Shanks and Ben Beckman to be fiery in its nature, to the point that he was able to stop blizzards with just his presence for his entire stay there. And again, we have another instance of this in Drum Island, when citizens reported that when Ace was there, it didn't snow for an entire day. And no other Haki highlights someone's presence quite like Conqueror's. So this of course would be a case where Ace's conquering spirit, combined with his fire-based devil fruit, is having the effect that it does when he visits a winter island. And this is just scratching the surface. I'm not sure if he was doing this on purpose. It doesn't seem likely that he was, but just imagine what he could do if he consciously took control of this ability. And you can very well apply this to any conqueror with the devil fruit when attempting to gauge what might be possible or what they may already be able to do. Take for instance someone like Whitebeard. He possesses the strongest devil fruit in the series, and with it, he is stated to be able to destroy the world by Sengoku. Now, most people just assume this is nothing but hyperbole, and at one point that was my immediate thought as well, because it's hard to imagine how this is even possible. But we should know by now, to really understand One Piece, you have to stretch the limits of your imagination and open your mind to all sorts of possibilities. So, with the Gura Gura no Mi, what if the ability to destroy the world is actually granted by way of Conqueror's Haki? What if the level of quakes needed to actually end existence and life on the planet can only be achieved by a conqueror? Even if that might not be the actual reality, I still think there has to be some way that a fruit like this can be amplified with Conqueror's Haki to truly reach its potential. We have cases like the gravity fruit where this man Fujitora is already effortlessly bringing down meteors. What if he could go even further using much stronger gravity and bringing down much larger masses? So you can see there's a variety of avenues that Oda can go with Conqueror's Haki, and the possibilities are truly limitless. We're getting to the point in the series where the most revered abilities in the story are getting their exposition. So we'll start to see what Oda's been holding back for over 20 years with certain characters and concepts for the power system that have been in the works for ages. I know it might be frustrating at times with how little we know, but at the same time it's pretty exciting when something finally gets revealed, like with everything we got in chapter 1010. It really wouldn't hit the same if we had it all handed to us all at once, even if something seems painfully obvious. But with that, those are all my thoughts on what may be possible with what we know about Conqueror's Haki. Tell me how you feel though, and if you think any of what I said makes sense. Also, let me know what you think the true potential of Conqueror's Haki is as well. Comment all of your thoughts down below, but also don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel as well.